Well, good morning again. It's a beautiful day out here in Marathon. Sun shining. It's a little cool. I think it's around 22 below. So I guess you could consider that a little on the cold side. I was out for coffee with my buddies and just got back in the shop. And I've got a guitar back that I'd worked on a little while back. And this was the Martin guitar that I had a problem with a while back with the nut, and we got that nut out, and raised that E string, the high E string, because this was the one that the string was sitting on the right on the fret, and it was causing fret buzz. So anyways, it came back not because of the buzz. But the player now is saying, no more buzz, but he would like all the strings dropped on the nut. So although the only string I actually put up was the high E string. That was the one I used a little baking soda and crazy glue, knocked the nut off, filled it up, and filed it down and reseated the high E string. But anyways, he played it a bit, and he says, no, I want the whole, every string he figures is too high now. So what we're going to do is we're going to show you just basically in a situation like this, what we're going to do to drop that nut down. So if you want to stay tuned and see what's going to go on with this guy today, this is going to be hopefully a short one. So anyway, stay tuned, and I'll put it on the overhead sky cam. Well, hopefully you can see that okay. This is the one, as I mentioned before, this is the one that I had a hard time getting that nut out of and had to pound it out sideways. But now I know there won't be a problem with that, because before I put this nut back in, I went and I sanded a little bit off the front of the nut here, made it a little narrower so it's not in there so tight. So at this point in time, this nut is I'm just gonna take that nut and I'm just gonna give it a hit, just like this. And it's already loose. It's ready to pull out. So at that point in time now, what we're going to do is, like I say, we're just going to sand a little bit off the nut. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to just move this out of the way here for a minute. Get the guitar out of view. And I put it over there behind me, and I now have the nut in question that I just took out. And all we're going to do now is we're going to take some sandpaper, and we're going to drop, basically by sanding the bottom of that nut, what we're going to do is we're going to take a little bit off the bottom. And how much? Well, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to take a black magic marker, it's a Sharpie, and I'm just going to, right on the bottom here, I'm just going to draw a black line, just on an angle here like this. Well, that one ran out of ink. So that one ain't going to draw nothing on there. Let's try this one. Okay, that one works. And what I'm doing is I'm drawing a black line on the side of this nut. So you can see what I got there. I'm going to sand that little bit off just so I don't see that black line anymore. So I'm taking off just a little bit off that nut. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put that nut back on and check the string height again. And if I still have to take a little bit more off, I'm going to take that nut, draw that little black line there, and sand it just to take that black line away. So, I'm only taking off just a hair, if you will, at a time. Because if I sand too much off this nut, and the strings are too low, I got to start all over again and put a new nut on that guitar, which I don't want to do. So I'm going to get my little board here, nice flat board, and I'm going to look for some coarser sandpaper in my sandpaper box. I got a whole box of different. I'll show you to you. See what I have here? I've got a whole box of all different sizes of sandpaper. And I go pretty well everything from about 150 grit all the way up to, I think the highest I got is 1600. So, all different gauges or sizes of sandpaper. So I'm going to go with a fairly heavy one here. This one here is what? What have I got here? Oh, 120, a little too high. I'm going to go with 220. So I'm using 220 sandpaper for this. And like I say, all I'm going to do, I know this is a flat surface, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to take that nut back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and I'm going to keep going till that black line disappears. That's the effort here today. So what I'm doing is I'm dropping down that nut ever so slightly, and of course, if I keep this straight and flat, I'm dropping all the strings down, the same amount. And of course the effort is to try to keep this as flat and straight as possible, which is not a big deal. A little bit more. Bit more. That black line is gone. So with that said and done, what I'm going to do, put this back here, get rid of my sandpaper, just put it on the back table here. Take my guitar, I'll bring my guitar in. And of course, I've got the nut in there now, but what I'm not going to do, I'm not going to glue that nut in yet, Because what I want to do is put the nut there. I want to reintroduce the strings onto that nut, one at a time. And we're going to see what the height is on that nut now. So you see the way I'm going at this is just one string at a time going back on. Not gluing it in. We're going to check it out first. See what we got going here. So there we go. Make sure we got that straight. Now we're going to put some tension on a couple strings and see what that's done to our height on it. Oh yeah, I think that's really going to make a difference. I'm thinking. We're going to see in a minute. Let's tighten her up here. Get a bit of tension on everything. Keep in mind I haven't glued that in yet. So I'm going to have to take these strings off one more time and do a glue job on this thing. Wow. Nice touch on it now. It did come down a little bit. So I'm kind of thinking that maybe that's just about perfect what I did. I don't see any problem with that. Just looking at it. Yeah. Okie dokie. So with that said and done, back these strings off again. Back them off. You know, I can't stress enough to people that buy a guitar, even a top of the line guitar, whether, you know, some of the big name brands, you know, Gibson, Taylor, Martin, Ibanez. And the one thing that, you know, that's common I find on guitars is this nut here. This bloody nut is one of the biggest factors in playability of a guitar, whether it be electric or acoustic. You got to make sure that you have this nut, you know, as far as the height set correctly. So, you know, a lot of times, like I've mentioned this before in other videos, a lot of times what you're going to find is right from the factory, they always have this a little high. I find they do anyways. And I mentioned it before, and it's probably a good thing they have it a little high, because if it's too low, you're looking at a new nut or a lot of work. If this is a little too high, not a big deal like I'm showing you to take it off and drop the whole nut down. Or if you got one string a little high and you just have to do a little filing there to drop the one string, that's not a big deal either. But if that whole nut is too short, basically knock it off and put a new nut on. There's not much you can do about it. I guess you could go through a whole bunch of trying to shim the nut and all this kind of crapola, but you're probably better just to put a new nut on. So anyway, make a long story short, we're going to take this off. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to just pull this out of the way. I'll take the nut off and I'll show you in a minute what's going on here. The way I do it anyway. Pull that nut out. So there's the nut right there. And what I'm going to do is basically I'm just going to put a couple little drops of crazy glue on the bottom of that nut. That's all I'm going to do. And I'll get my crazy glue out. For this purpose, I can just use the regular crazy glue. I don't need to have to use the super thin stuff or anything like that I would use, you know, on a guitar. I can just go and, you know, basically, nothing wrong with just using the regular stuff here. So let's take a look here. These are, I've used all these. I use a lot of crazy glue, let me tell you. I use a lot of crazy glue. One thing that I do when I'm working with anything like this, crazy glue or anything like this at all, you know what I want to do? I always make sure I get everything out of the way. I don't want to get crazy glue on somebody's guitar, on the front of it or on the finish or something like that. So I always make an effort to do that kind of stuff. You know, I don't even want it on here. So I usually put a little paper down, take my crazy glue, put a couple drops on here. You're going to see what I do. I'm going to put one drop here, and I'm going to put one drop there. Basically like that. Move this out of the way. Get my guitar. And here I just dropped that nut right on there now. Make sure the strings are out of the way. Make sure you get this thing centered correctly. Just like that. Let that crazy glue set up. What I'm doing, I'm just making sure that we've got that dead center. Nothing hanging over the edges here. And we're fine. So with that, I'm going to put this on pause and I'll let this sit for a few minutes, then I'll turn the video back on, be back shortly. Well, welcome back. So got the strings put on. Got it tuned up to pitch. And going to give it a shot, see what she sounds like. I'm in my studio today. Left the workshop, the other side of the house, sitting in what we call the music room, which is basically all that's in here is music equipment. Anyway, see what this sounds like. sounds nice. Martin guitars, I don't care what you say. They're the sound of the Dreadnought on the Martins are really, really hard to beat. I'm just going to make sure that I got no fret buzz going on here. Do some bar chords here, make sure. Very nice sound. And the playability, I have to admit, drop that nut that little bit there, and it makes a big difference on the playability of this guitar. So we've got no buzzing at all. But you see how little I took that down? If you can imagine, on that nut, when I drew that that black line, I drew the you know, if there's the corner of the nut, I drew that black line on an angle like this. So there was just a hair showing on the side of the nut when you looked at it. So that sanding down, I'm not kidding you. I mean, just a little bit I took off. And it's surprisingly, you know, how much difference something that small can make. And I notice, I played this guitar before, and I notice especially when I'm, you know, when you're into your key of C, and I notice when, you know, you're doing an F. I notice a lot easier on the fingers on those chords when you're playing with that nut drop. So, you know, the client was probably right. He said, you know, a little high, and I worked on this guitar, like I say, a month ago, so I'm not going to even bill a guy for this. This was a very small job to do. But what I'm going to do, just for a laugh, I'm going to take this the cam off here, and I'm going to just kind of show you around the studio here. Give you a little preview of what kind of what goes on and what I've got here. So if you just want to hang on just a minute, I'll be right back. Well, this gives you kind of a pretty good view of what we call the studio room here, and you can kind of see we've got a little day bed here if you want to take a little snooze, get a little tired in the afternoon. An old guy like me, you know, sometimes got to have a little afternoon nap. But anyway, basically the computer and the big screen TV back there, you know, that's basically to use that to play videos on. So when you're back here practicing, you can always go to the original artist and play the song, and then play along with the artist. So that's one of the things that the main reason why we got the TV and that in here. But back on the wall here, it's kind of where I keep the guitars, and this is also where I keep my client guitars. So for an example, in this particular room here, I have a humidifier going, and also up on the wall here, I make sure that, let me get a little closer here and I'll show you what I'm talking about. I want to make sure that we keep the humidity. I can see right now it's sitting at around 50%, and you can see the temperature sitting around 72 on that. So this is the environmental you know, room that I like to maintain, so that you know, whether it be my instruments, or while I've got client instruments waiting for parts or waiting for repair, this is where I hang my guitars and my client guitars, and I never have to worry about you know the humidity or drying it out, or the guitar's here for a week. No big deal. What have I got here? So I got a rack of guitars. I got a Fishman acoustic amp sitting back there. I have a Fender Acoustasonic 90 watt amp here for, this is again acoustic amp. Had a previous video when I unpacked this. Love this. I got a Fender 68 reissue Vibrolux 35 watt tube amp, great amp. I've got a Boss Katana. It's a twin speaker, it's a twin 12. It's a 100 watt digital amp. So these are the main, basically the main amps that I would use basically for my if I'm playing out on a gig, depending on the size of the place I'm playing in. That 35 watt tube amp, believe it or not, you turn that up past 5 and it'll blow you right out of the house. That's a very loud amp. Back here, what do we got? As far as the mixer board is concerned, love this. I got a Soundcraft Signature 22. That's the multi-track version, so that you can actually, if it can be live or recorded. It's for both, so you can actually have separate tracks for everything on that if you're using it as a recording mixer board. I really don't. I'm using it for live, but make a long story short, I think there was about a $200 difference between the single track and the multi-track. And you're going to spend $1,200-1,500 for a mixer board. You might as well get the top of the line. Got a couple of amps down here. These are PA amps. I got a couple of here, 3,000 watts each, in that little metal rack down there. That's kind of what we take out on our gigs. Back here we got a couple of big EV bass speakers, and then I got some PV 1,200 watts sitting on top. And even in a reasonable size hall, there's enough power there. As far as the sound is concerned, puts out a pretty good sound. As far as monitors, I haven't got enough room in this house, in this room, I should say. But we got in the other room here. We have I keep a couple of monitors back in here. Stage monitors, wedges. They're kind of hid back in there. One's back underneath there, and there's another one there. I believe they're 800 watt passive stage monitors, and I have two in the shop, in the other end of the shop as well. So, anyways, it just kind of gives you a little overview of the setup here, and kind of where the guitars are stored and whatnot. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed the little tour around, see kind of what's going on in the other side of the house here. You see a lot in the shop when you look at my videos, but you don't really see a lot on this side of it. So I thought I'd give you a little preview, and anyway, hope you enjoyed it. Over and out, and you all have a good day.